Welcome. You're listening to a journey made just for women born under the sign of Aries. Thank you for being here, not because you happened to click on this video, but because something inside you quietly pulled you in. A gentle whisper like the wind, but deep as the ocean. And if you've been sleeping alone lately, I want you to know something. You are not alone, not even close, because some of the most powerful transformations in life only begin when all the noise around you finally goes silent. And some of the most magical rebirths can only happen in the spaces where it's just you and the universe. So if you're in a chapter right now where half the bed is empty, no hand to hold, your phone barely lights up with messages, and you quietly ask yourself each night, did I do something wrong? Please don't mistake this for failure. You're not breaking down. You're being guided with care into a process designed by something greater, an invisible hand, but one full of love. You see, the universe never pulls you away from the crowd, never removes someone from your life, and never lets you wake up alone without a sacred reason. Because sometimes to hear your own heartbeat clearly, you need to step away from the loudest sounds of all. You are Aries, the first flame of the zodiac, a warrior, a trailblazer, a soul born to break limits and move forward no matter what. But tell me, can a fire like that truly grow in the arms of someone who isn't ready? Or does it need time to step back, to be rebuilt from its roots, to burn once more so brightly that no one can pass by without stopping to look? The nights you spend alone, they are not an absence of love. They're sacred pauses, so you can come back to yourself, to hear again the voice you may have forgotten, the voice of a woman who is strong but soft, rational but still longs to be held with tenderness, the voice of someone who gave too much and forgot that she too deserves to receive. Right now, the universe is pulling you away from the distractions, not to make you feel small, but to awaken something deeper, the soul warrior inside you, the one who once survived pain with courage, and is now learning how not just to survive, but to live beautifully, fully. And you know something, not everyone is chosen for this chapter. Only the souls that are truly ready to grow, to stop living for approval and begin living from their own inner light, get placed into this sacred state of solitude. Being alone doesn't mean you have no one. It means you finally have yourself again, the version of you that you forgot, the woman who carries a strength that could rebuild her own world, but who also has days where she just wants someone to sit beside her and gently say, you don't have to be strong right now. And this time, you will be the one to say that to yourself, because once you begin to understand that loneliness is not failure, but a divine strategy from the universe, you stop fearing the nights with just one pillow. You start touching the silence with gratitude, because deep down you feel it. This silence is leading you home, back to you in the truest, most complete way. And just as you begin to embrace that wholeness, something shifts, quietly. A new current of energy starts to stir within you. A silent, powerful fire beginning to rise again. And the moment you fall in love with your own stillness is the very moment your primal flame begins to reshape itself, night after night, with no one beside you but everything inside you being reborn. Nothing is lost, it's all transforming. And then, one day you'll realize that lonely night you once feared was never your weakness. It was the sacred forge where your fire was being reignited stronger than ever before. Night falls, the city quiets down, and somewhere, in a very private corner of the world, a woman born under Aries lays down to sleep alone. No one calls your name in the dark tonight. No hand reaches out to touch your back and say, you're okay. But in that moment of silence where it feels like no one sees you, something sacred is unfolding. The fire inside you, the one that once burned out of anger, grief, injustice, is being reforged. It's no longer reckless, no longer desperate to be seen. It's learning to wait, to hold back, to stand strong. You know, Aries is the first sign, born under Mars, the planet of storms and intensity. And yet the Aries woman who has walked through pain is not the same warrior she used to be. She's learned how to stand still in the ashes without screaming. She's learned how to swallow tears and hold her tongue, not because she's weak, but because she now knows that the most powerful things grow in silence. And these nights alone, the ones where only your sigh keeps you company, they are not empty. They are your soul, inside a sacred forge, not to make you suffer, but to shape you into a kind of woman the world rarely gets to meet. A woman who knows her worth so deeply, she no longer needs to prove it. A woman who can sit in the dark and still radiate from within, because she doesn't rely on outside light to feel her own glow anymore. Maybe you've never thought of it this way, but that moment when you lie there alone, staring up at the ceiling, asking quietly, "When will I feel happy again?" That moment is when your flame is burning slow and deep, not a fire meant to be seen, but a fire meant to be felt. And so, with every night, every breath, every time you choose not to text first, not to beg for a little affection, you are getting closer to a new version of yourself, one that's strong but calm, one that no longer endures, but chooses what she's willing to walk through. You're no longer the woman who simply survives. You are the woman who chose her struggle and then rose again. From the very place where she once fell, out there, someone might look at you and think you're lonely, that you're sad, but they don't know. You're rebuilding your energy on a frequency so refined, only those with real depth could even sense it. You're learning to live with yourself and, more importantly, to cherish yourself. You don't need to always be cheerful. You don't need to be good at holding it all in anymore. You just need to be real and whole. Because when an Aries learns to sit with silence, it's no longer escape. It's a new kind of bravery, a courage that doesn't shout. It just lies down, closes its eyes, breathes deeply, and whispers, "No one's holding me tonight, but I am holding me, fully, quietly, completely." And in that very moment, you begin to take back your destiny, because no one can control a woman who has learned to sit inside her own loneliness and not be afraid. She no longer flinches at surface-level attention. She's no longer shaken by sweet words that carry no truth. She becomes the one who is chosen because she chose herself first. And while the world may still think you're just a woman sleeping alone, somewhere in the invisible folds of space, a tiny vibration begins to echo. A signal that your energy has changed. You no longer need someone beside you to feel full. And from this quietest place, your light is beginning to rise. A light the world cannot ignore. A light that needs no permission. Because it's becoming something more than presence, it's becoming power. After you've made it through enough nights where no one touched you, no one listened, no one sent that simple message asking, "Did you fall asleep yet?" You begin to realize something. You no longer need someone else to fill that empty space, and strangely, that's the moment you begin to be chosen. Aries, you were never weak when it came to love. You loved like a summer storm. Wild, fast, all in, and maybe that's why your deepest wounds came from love too, because you've never known how to love halfway. When you love, you give it all. When you trust completely. So yes, you waited for someone to realize your worth. Waited for someone to come back and say, "I was wrong." Waited for a message, a call, a reason, but there comes a moment when even your heart gets tired and you stop. Not because the love is gone, but because you finally looked in the mirror and saw her. The woman who's still standing, still raising her children, still going to work, still taking care of herself, still kind even when no one was kind back. And you whispered to yourself, "Why am I waiting to be chosen when I am the one worth walking toward?" That's when things begin to shift, quietly. No big announcements. You just start pulling your energy back, piece by piece. You begin listening to yourself more. You stop replying to texts just to be polite. You stop smiling just so people won't call you cold. You stop holding on to those who never really held you. You become the kind of woman others approach more carefully. Not because you're guarded, but because your peace is no longer up for grabs. You know what it cost to get here. There was a time you searched for love, but now you define it. You no longer chase validation. You set the rules, and something strange happens when you do that. The world shifts. People who once looked past you now hesitate. Those who left become curious. And those who once hurt you don't know what to do with the silence you now hold like a sword. You don't have to say you've changed. They can feel it. In the way you walk, in the way you don't flinch at the little things anymore. You are no longer easy to break, and the most beautiful part, you've stopped asking, "What am I still missing?" Because now you know you are the prize. A reward for those with enough strength, honesty, and maturity not to damage the light you fought so hard to reclaim. You're no longer searching for love. Now, love has to come to you and ask to stay, slowly, gently, without performance, because you no longer crave the glitter on the surface. You want depth, you want fire. Not the kind that burns fast, but the one that stays warm through cold nights. That same fire you've been tending quietly in your soul all this time. And when you become that kind of woman, everything you touch starts to shift. Even destiny starts knocking differently. New doors open. But which one is true? And which is just another test. Will you still be drawn to what looks shiny at first glance? Or have you grown strong enough to see the difference between a chance and a cycle? That question can only be answered once you're ready to step into the next layer, the deeper space, where rebirth no longer comes from outside, but begins from within. There are flames that burn everything down, and then there are flames that burn quietly in the dark, just enough to warm an entire journey, rising again from the inside out. An Aries woman, when she has moved through loss, when she stops seeking validation from the world, that's when a new kind of fire begins to rise within her. No longer the wild blaze of a heart broken by betrayal, no longer the fire of rage or resentment or desperate reaching. Now, it is the fire of awakening, a light that runs deep, silent, steady, and impossible to put out. Aries is ruled by Mars, the planet of the warrior. And after each battle, a warrior has two choices: keep fighting out of bitterness or stop, turn inward and begin fighting for the life she truly deserves. You, the woman listening right now, you've stood up more times than you can count. You've stood when others collapsed. You've stood even when your own heart was in pieces. You've been strong for so long that people forgot you're allowed to be soft too. But now, you don't have to hold yourself together anymore, because you're entering a new phase, where the fire inside you is being reborn. This fire doesn't burn to destroy. It burns to illuminate. It doesn't hurt you anymore. Now it reminds you of who you are. The woman who once thought she needed love to feel worthy now understands that love must first come from the way she honors herself. The woman who once gave all her energy to keep one-sided relationships alive has learned to protect her own energy first. You no longer live in reaction. You live in intention. You don't react to coldness, you pull your warmth back. You don't react to criticism, you hold your silence like a shield. You don't react to loneliness, you hold it as a sacred part of your rebirth. That's when the fire inside you fully changes its nature. It no longer needs to be seen. It only needs to be remembered. The fire of Aries is not like the others. It's not just action, it's resurrection. It's the strength to begin again even when everything seems lost. And in that moment, when the familiar world around you collapses, you begin to discover a part of yourself you've never met before. Quieter, wiser, rooted like the earth itself. Not everyone can survive these silent chapters, but Aries, you don't just survive. You turn solitude into a forge and recreate yourself. You rewrite the way you love. You redraw your boundaries. You no longer enter someone's life to be accepted. You enter to decide if they are worthy to walk beside you. That is the privilege of a woman who has walked through fire. She no longer fears the dark, because she knows only in the dark can her own flame be truly seen. And from that quiet light, you begin to see things you once thought were impossible. New chances, new connections, new abilities you've never allowed yourself to imagine. They rise, like a sunrise after the longest winter. Not hope that's fragile, but faith rooted deep in truth, because now you know. You've walked through the fire, you've burned away the old, and you are no longer the woman who merely survived the pain. You are the one who rose from the ashes, radiant, awake, and ready to live a life that's completely new. A life where you choose what's worthy of you. A life where clarity leads the way, not desperation or the need to be loved to feel whole. And from this moment forward, a brand new chapter begins, where invitations from life are no longer just opportunities. They're tests, quiet ones, to see if you're truly ready to step into a life that finally matches your light. When a flame has been forged in the dark, it no longer burns out of impulse. It knows when to rise, and when to stay quiet, keeping just enough warmth to protect itself from the cold. Just like you, Aries, when you've walked through long, quiet nights alone, when you've learned to fall in love with silence, to step inward and heal, a new season begins to unfold. The season of invitations. They show up gently like late blooming flowers after winter. A new glance from a stranger at your usual cafe. A soft invitation from someone who once passed you by. An unexpected job offer right when you started thinking about changing direction. A text from someone who once left without a word. The universe will begin sending you new frequencies. Some will stir your curiosity, some will stir your heart. But here's the thing, not everything that shows up is a gift. Some are simply tests disguised in sweetness, in shimmer, in promises. They're not meant to break you, they're meant to ask you, Have you really changed? Are you ready to say no to what once hurt you? Are you still drawn to things that feel good but lack depth? Will a little attention still soften your boundaries even if you know deep down it's not enough to nourish your soul? This is when you step back, you breathe, you pause, you don't rush to reply. You don't grab the first hand just because it's reaching out. Because a true Aries woman, after walking through fire, doesn't choose out of fear of missing out. She chooses from the fullness she's discovered within. She doesn't need anyone to come save her. She welcomes only what deserves to stand in the light she's fought so hard to protect. Some chances will look like sunrise, but they're really just lightning. Beautiful, but gone too fast. Some people will come back as if they've changed, but they're just lonely. That's why the most important thing in the days ahead is clarity. Not the kind that comes from overthinking, but the kind that comes from soul sight, the kind of intuition that only grows when a woman has sat with herself through many silent nights. It's in the way you feel when someone enters your space. Do you feel safe to open, or are you bracing yourself to fit in? Do you feel seen, or just conditionally heard? Do you feel ease, or another quiet bargain asking you to trade your worth for closeness? The answer won't be in what they say. It will be in how your body responds when you're next to them. Do you feel peace or pressure? Do you feel light, or are you already fading? Aries, you're no longer chasing anyone else's spotlight, because now you are the light, and real light never rushes. It's strong enough to wait, steady enough not to settle, and warm enough to say no to what isn't true. So when the invitations come knocking, remember this: not everything that shows up deserves to be let in. Step back, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, is this truly right for the woman I've become? And if the answer is no, smile, close that door with grace, and keep walking. Because ahead there are still things on their way to you. Things you won't need to chase. You won't need to beg for them to stay. They will arrive simply because you've become the woman who finally chooses herself first. There's a very special moment in the journey of an Aries woman. It's when she stops seeing loneliness as a punishment and starts seeing it as a rare gift. A gift reserved only for those brave enough to sit with themselves, to stay with the emptiness without rushing to find someone to fill it. You know, there's a strange kind of freedom hidden inside those long, silent nights. Not the kind you post for the world to see. Not the loud, laughing, bold kind of freedom, but the quiet kind. The kind where you can sit in a still room, close your eyes, and feel like nothing is missing. The kind where you stop checking your phone, where you no longer live in the waiting. The kind where you realize you don't need to be chosen anymore, because now, deep inside, you've started choosing your life. You choose who gets to step into your energy. You choose who's worthy of hearing your untold stories. You choose who's quiet enough to listen, deep enough to understand, and strong enough not to hurt you again. No more choices made out of fear of being alone. No more settling just to have someone stay. Now you choose from fullness, because you understand a woman who doesn't need someone else to feel valuable is the most magnetic woman of all. You no longer need to prove anything. You don't bend yourself to fit into someone else's life. You are who you are, and anyone with the right eyes will see it. Here's the beautiful part. You're about to walk out of that phase of sleeping alone because of circumstance. But this time, you won't rush into anything just because you feel lonely. If you choose to share your heart again, it'll be because someone has earned it, not because you need to be saved. And that difference, that's your power. The power of an Aries woman. Reborn, she doesn't need to say much. But every step she takes is certain. She doesn't need to impress. But people pause when they feel the quiet light that surrounds her, because that light doesn't come from appearance. It comes from a soul that's made it through the dark and still chose to live with gratitude. Right now, you are standing in a space few ever reach. The edge between the woman who once endured and the woman who's about to take full command of her life. Not because you've become cold, but because you've become clear. You now know no one can love you fully if you haven't learned to cherish your own solitude. And no one gets to stay if their energy still plays the game of halfway. True freedom doesn't come from having someone next to you. It comes from no longer being afraid of losing anyone. And when you reach that kind of freedom, something strange and beautiful happens. The good things start to find you quietly, gently, slowly, but with depth, because now you're not attracting from hunger, but from wholeness. From the way your eyes shine, from the way you walk, from how you say no with softness. And one day, on a day that feels perfectly ordinary, you'll realize something. You're no longer the one searching for love. You're the one love must rise to meet, with kindness, with intention, and when that day comes, life won't just hand you something beautiful, it will give you something that touches the very roots of your soul. You've come this far. And still, there's one last message from the universe. One final layer, where loneliness is no longer an empty space, but a sacred place where the soul begins to heal. Are you ready to step into that last sanctuary? Say the word, and we'll go there together. There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't break you down. It reminds you of who you are. And on those nights when you, an Aries woman, quietly lay your head down, the room dark, the city noise fading into a soft, distant hum, somewhere in the unseen space around you, the universe leans in and whispers, "You're almost ready." You may not hear it with your ears, but your soul, the deepest part of you, it's already received that message long ago. Because only when you stop asking when, do you truly begin to trust the rhythm of life. And only when you stop counting the days you've been alone, can you begin to feel the sacred value of each moment of freedom you now have. Aries woman, after all the heartbreaks, the breakdowns, the nights with no good night message, you've come to understand something. True love never comes to fill a void. It only shows up when there's no empty space left inside you. And here's the truth, those nights alone, they were never the end. They were the beginning of a whole new level of living. A level where you're no longer the one searching for love. You become the reason love goes searching. You're no longer the one hoping to be chosen. You're the one who makes people realize how lucky they are just to be near your light. You no longer enter someone's life hoping to be seen. You arrive whole, radiant, with a smile in your eyes and shoulders no longer carrying the weight of the past. That's when you become magnetic effortlessly, not because you're trying to be more, but because you've finally accepted you are enough. Every scar, every fall, every morning you woke up with swollen eyes after crying all night, all of it had a purpose. And one day you'll look back and be grateful. Grateful for the ones who left because they taught you. Staying should never have to be begged for. Grateful for the loneliness because it gave you space to hear your truest voice. And most of all, grateful for yourself because you didn't give up. You didn't melt into half-hearted invitations. You didn't quit when everything felt like there was nothing left to believe in. You stayed with yourself. And that was the first kind of love the universe ever asked from you. From now on, you no longer need someone's presence to validate your worth. You don't need an embrace to feel loved, because now, you know how to embrace yourself with kindness, with trust, with light born from the very parts of you you once feared the most. Aries woman, you've walked a path very few are brave enough to face. You didn't run from it, you moved through it. And now you're walking out the other side of loneliness, carrying not just a stronger soul, but a softer strength that can light the way for others. Everything you've been through, it wasn't meaningless. It's living proof that you were chosen not to preach, but to inspire simply by the way you live. And if tonight you still find yourself sleeping alone, please remember, you have not been forgotten. You're being honored because the universe knows. A woman like you deserves a love that arrives on time, a love that never makes you question your worth, a love that doesn't ask you to shrink just to fit into someone else's life, a love that can only appear once you've become the brightest version of you. Thank you for walking with me this far, and if you're still listening now, I know somewhere deep in your heart you're smiling, not because you have it all figured out, but because now you finally believe. The best is yet to come, so hold on to that fire. And if there's ever a night when you forget who you are, come back to this. This recording will always be here, as a gentle reminder. You were never just meant to be loved, you are the place love returns to. I'll see you again in the next chapter, slower, deeper, and more whole than ever before. Good night, Aries, even if tonight it's still just you, because who knows, in some quiet dream, something magical might already be knocking.